Thank you, Madam Speaker. B500.
Madam Speaker, the introduction of an excise duty of 2 rupees per unit on non-biodegradable plastic containers, namely takeaways, plates, bowls, cups and trays, was announced in the budget speech 2018-19. The measure became effective on the 2nd of May 2019, that is 10 months later, to give ample time for importers and manufacturers to shift from non-biodegradable disposable plastic containers to biodegradable containers. I am informed that plastic waste, which will take over 100 years to degrade, constitute about 14% of the total waste landfill in Mauritius. The use of disposable plastic food containers, including containers used for takeaways, has widely increased in Mauritius with fast-changing consumption patterns. During the recent flash floods, it has been established that plastic products were a major cause of obstruction of drains and waterways. In view thereof, there is need to change the mindset of consumers and to shift from a throwaway society to an ecologically responsible one. The House will recall that this government took the bold decision to ban non-biodegradable plastic bags as from the 1st of January 2016. The introduction of the excise duty on non-biodegradable plastic containers was another step in our waste management strategy to reduce generated waste. Regarding Part A of the question, I am informed that an amount of 3.4 million rupees has been collected as excise duty for the period 2nd of May to 27th of June 2019. And concerning Part B of the question, Item 90 of Part 1A of the first schedule to the Excise Act makes provision for importers and manufacturers to be exempted from payment of the excise duty where the plastic containers are used for the packing of products. The exempted packing containers are used by local manufacturers to pack and seal their products for wholesale or retail trade or export, and as such are an input in the manufacturing process. In addition, the packing of uncooked vegetables, meat and fruits is also exempted. However, disposable plastic containers, including takeaways, used for the packing of food products for immediate consumption are not exempted. These are single-use plastic containers, and most of them end up as litter in drains and rivers.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Honourable Prime Minister mentioned the amendment to the Excise Act to exclude certain importers and manufacturers. May I know from the Honourable Prime Minister whether a survey has been carried out by, at the level of his ministry or the Ministry of Environment, to establish how much polluting non-biodegradable material is being exempted from the provision of this 2 rupee levy for local manufacturers?
Well, what I can say is that when this measure was adopted, of course, prior to this measure being adopted, we had discussions with the industry. And there have been representations, because we all want to see that we get rid of those plastic pollutants. But we have to be realistic also. In a number of cases, there are manufacturing processes which require that they use certain plastic components with regard to their process. I've just mentioned, I don't want to go into the details of that. That is why we have applied a policy where, of course, for those that are being used for immediate consumption, like food and so on, we want to, to see to it that these are not being thrown away just like that, and they cause nuisance also, and then for processing of these wastes, it's another problem. So the policy of this government, I mean, let me say the vision of this government is at least to give enough time for these companies, enterprises to adapt so that they find alternatives. They have other options also. And the signal is there. So in time to come, we will see to it that we will apply this measure to a wider, to a greater number of enterprises.
Yes. So the Honourable Prime Minister confirmed that the government has bowed to pressure from the big polluters. So may I know from the Honourable Prime Minister, why is it that exemption is on containers, plates, bowl, cups, trays, but not on plastic bottles?
Madam Speaker, again here, we are not bowing down to pressure. As I say, we are realistic. Does the Honourable Member want to see a number of enterprises closing down because we are just putting additional taxes on, their processes? That's why I say, I agree that we have to fight and to see to it that we eliminate at the end of the day. The end result of what this government would want, and I believe this is in line with your questioning, is that we get rid of the use of plastics. Yes, we are agreeable to that. But there is a road before we can reach that level. And I want to do it in such a way that we have started. These are the measures. We have already abolished and banned plastic bags. It's already a very concrete and I would say a very courageous measure. And I remember, the number of protests that we had but in spite of that, we went ahead. Now, let us proceed in a manner that will at least give time for the industry also to be prepared for alternatives. And this is the approach that this government is having.
During the 2 rupee levy, there has been an increase in the use of paper product. But these paper products, whether it is cup or trays, these paper products also contain non-biodegradable materials. So may I ask the Honourable Prime Minister to consider with the Honourable Minister of Environment to see whether these 2 rupee levies can also be extended to other material which are non-biodegradable, and which may fall foul of this ban on plastic.
Well, first of all, I am informed that PET bottles are also subject to this excise duty of 2 rupees per unit. Now, well, with regard to the substitution, the paper or carton, what is being used, I stand to be advised, Madam Speaker. I don't know about the technicality, whether they do contain non-biodegradable material. I will have to be advised and seek information from the scientists, and then we'll be in a position to answer. But of course, if they do contain, we have to see to it that whatever substitution we have is substitution that is going to be environment friendly.
Next question.
B501.
Madam Speaker, I wish to inform the House that the ratio of gross domestic saving to GDP was 10.6% in 2014, 10.4% in 2015, 11% in 2016, 10% in 2017, and 9% in 2018. For 2019, Statistics Mauritius is forecasting a higher gross domestic saving to GDP ratio of 9.5%. At the request of the Ministry of Finance and Economic Development, the IMF has, in the context of the 2019 Article 4 consultation, carried out a study on private savings, which is the main contributor to national savings in Mauritius. During that exercise, the IMF has had extensive discussions with the ministry as well as with the Bank of Mauritius. The main findings of the IMF study are as follows. The two main determinants of private savings in Mauritius are interest rate on deposits and economic growth. Private savings in Mauritius do not appear to respond strongly to demographic trends. According to the IMF, a rapidly rising old age dependency ratio requires a higher level of savings. That is why in the 2019-2020 budget speech, I announced the issuance by government of 2 silver bonds with an annual interest rate of 5.5% for the elderly to improve the return on their savings and also for encouraging savings towards retirement. Given the economic and demographic characteristics of Mauritius, the private saving rate is about 3% of GDP, lower than potential. There have been several other studies on the determinants of the saving rate by independent researchers, in particular at the University of Mauritius, showing that real interest rate and the level of income are determinants of the level of savings in Mauritius. But income has a stronger influence. Madam Speaker, as regards the impact of savings on the GDP growth rate, to the extent that a low savings ratio reflects a high consumption ratio, it will be positive since higher consumption expenditure will stimulate economic growth, at least in the short term. In the long term, low saving rate can have a negative impact on growth if there is not enough domestic savings to finance investment. However, this is not the case in Mauritius because in spite of low domestic savings, there is enough liquidity in the banking system to finance investment. In fact, for several years, there have been excess liquidity in the banking system.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Honourable Prime Minister referred to the measures announced in the budget for the silver bonds. I know from the Honourable Prime Minister, why is it that there are 2 bonds being proposed? One for those who are 65 and above, and the second one for those who are 60 and younger, but nothing for those who are between 60 and 65.
Well, I have to check, Madam Speaker. I don't have the details with me, but obviously we will. I don't think that it was intended that it's for those who are 65 and above that we have this scheme, and for those who are less than 60, I believe that if that is the case, we should be able to correct it so that they should also be able to. Enjoy this scheme.
The Honourable Prime Minister mentioned that the fact of low saving is compensated by a higher rate of consumption, which is helpful for the growth. I agree with that, but isn't the Honourable Prime Minister agree with me that in fact lower savings means higher import? Because people are they don't consume locally, they import, and this is having a negative impact on our current account deficit.
Well, first of all, I have been given an explanation here with regard to those younger ones. I mean, says here it's true, but the younger ones are to encourage savings. The one for 65 plus is to improve income for the elderly. Anyway, I will find out more about that. But yes, well, again, it depends, Madam Speaker. Unfortunately, we do import a lot of our requirements, and therefore we have to have a policy where we encourage local production. But as the Honourable Member will know, that with trade liberalization and with the commitments that we have taken in order to be able to reduce tariffs, now the world is becoming a global market, and producers compete with each other without tariffs. Therefore, we can imagine that the cost of production for any entrepreneurs in Mauritius is quite high as compared to, especially countries like China, India and others producing mass production. So there again, we are in a situation where government gives support in order to encourage local production. We have a policy to sensitize people to consume local products. But all this has to be taken together so that at the same time we do boost the economic growth with consumption, but at the same time we try to economize and to spend less on imported products and be able to produce locally whatever we can.
Last question, thank you. Being given that the Honourable Prime Minister himself has mentioned that we are 3%, the saving rate is 3% lower than optimal, would the Honourable Prime Minister consider coming up with some packages to encourage savings, not just into these silver bonds, but in other products that may be issued by banks and insurance companies to encourage savings?
Well, we have taken a number of measures, Madam Speaker. I didn't want to go into that. Apart from the silver bonds, we have the Golden Jubilee bonds by the Bank of Mauritius, which is a 3-year Bank of Mauritius Golden Jubilee bond at an interest rate of 4.25%. This is 2.5% above the rate on bank deposits. The Bank of Mauritius has also encouraged banks to open up access to treasury bills and securities to the public as an additional saving outlet. The coming into force of the Mauritius Deposit Insurance Scheme Act in 2019, again to better protect the savings of bank depositors. Increase in financial deepening in Mauritius may also have encouraged higher consumption, as I said, due to a wider spectrum of instruments and consumer credit facilities. So a number of measures have already been taken. Of course, we need to monitor, and it is important. Let me say to the Honourable Member that when I look at the trend of gross domestic savings as a percentage of GDP, it is unfortunate that it has been falling regularly. And just to give an idea, from 2006 it was 19.1%, and 2014 it came down as as low as 10.6%. But since we have been in government, it has been hovering around 10%. Now it is, of course, the policy of government to try to see how we can increase that rate, and I am happy to see that at least for the coming financial, this financial year, it is going to increase according to Statistics Mauritius to 9.5. But that is not enough. We are not satisfied with that. So we will have to see to it how we can increase that rate again in the future.
Madam Speaker, earlier this year, I think or last year, the Honourable Attorney General came up with a law which increased the value of the matter that can be handled by the intermediate court, and as a result of this, there's likely to be more cases now in front of the intermediate court. So in view of this situation, is the government considering increasing the number of magistrates that will sit at the level of the intermediate court?
Well, I wish to point out that at the time when the prescribed amount was increased, it was done in full consultation with the judiciary. And even the prescribed date of the coming to force was fixed after consultation with the judiciary. Insofar as the number of posts, I do not have the exact number, but they have been constantly increased over a number of years. And if need be, we shall do the needful upon recommendations received from the judiciary.
B 533.
Madam Speaker, I am informed by the Commissioner of Police that as at date, 6 cases have been reported against one Honorable Minister of Financial Services and Good Governance. I am also informed that out of the 6 cases, 1 has been dismissed for want of prosecution by Mocha Court. 2, the Director of Public Prosecution has advised no further action in 3 cases. 2 cases are still pending, awaiting the advice of the Director of Public Prosecution.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. The Honourable Mr. Mento mentioned 6 cases. Last year, answering to a PNQ on 31st of July 2018, the Honourable Prime Minister mentioned 5 cases. So may I know from the Honourable Mr. Mento whether, in respect to all these cases, any statement has been taken from the Honourable Minister?
Surely there must have been an inquiry and it's normal that statement must have been taken. I don't have the information here.
The Honourable Minister Mento was...
Nobody is there. We have been deserted.
He said that he doesn't have the information.
Last year, the Honourable Prime Minister mentioned that one of the cases was an assault case. And we're talking about July 2018. The Honourable Minister Mento has been a senior counsel and a magistrate. Does he find it normal that for a simple case of assault, after 1 year, the police has still not decided to prefer charges?
Well, I don't know whether the cases that are still pending and waiting advice of the Director of Public Prosecution, maybe the case of assault is there. So the Director of Public Prosecution must be finding it very difficult to come to a conclusion.
Yes.
When the Honourable Minister Mento was Prime Minister, he did not hesitate to ask Mr. Dayal to step down as Minister because there was a police case and inquiry was pending. So may I know from the Honourable Mr. Mento whether he finds it normal that there is a deux poids, deux mesures when it comes to Mr. Dayal and when it comes to Mr. Sekar?
Depending on the gravity of the case.
Question, Honorable Uteem.
B 534.
Madam Speaker, the rights of the citizens of Mauritius to assemble freely are guaranteed by Section 3 and 13 of the Constitution. However, this right is not absolute. Section 13(2) of the Constitution provides that in the interests of defense, public safety, public order, and for the purpose of protecting the rights or freedoms of other individuals, the freedom of assembly of citizens may be restricted provided that it is justifiable in a democratic society. The Public Gathering Act 30 of 1991 makes provision for the orderly conduct of public meetings and processions. It also regulates the holding or organization of public gatherings after the Commissioner of Police has been notified, not less than 7 clear days before the day of the gathering. The Commissioner of Police has also been vested with powers to impose conditions on the holding or organization of public gatherings for the purpose of preventing public order, damage to property, or disruption of the life of the community. Madam Speaker, as regards spontaneous assemblies, Section 3.3 of Public Gathering Act provides that the Commissioner of Police may, on good cause shown to him, accept a shorter notice than the requirement of 7 clear days' notice. I am informed by the Commissioner of Police that the responsibilities of the police at a public gathering are to protect peaceful protesters against violence by counter-demonstrators and the public in general. During such gatherings, the police also ensure that there is no damage caused to property and that the traffic in the concerned area is not disturbed. They also have a duty to ensure a right balance between the rights of demonstrators and the interests of the society at large. Therefore, Madam Speaker, allowing individuals to hold or participate in peaceful and spontaneous public demonstration without prior police clearance is not in the interest of the public safety and security. The proposal to amend the PGA so as to allow individuals to hold or participate in peaceful and spontaneous public demonstration without prior police clearance is not recommended for the following reasons. 1, demonstration, though peaceful in nature, may at any time turn into a violent one, and hence it may jeopardize public safety and public order. 2, it may disrupt the smooth organization of important events held in public places. 3, it could hinder the sittings of the National Assembly. And 4, it may obstruct the free movement of individuals and vehicles on the public roads and in public places.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In the manifeste électoral, this is what the government promised. And I quote, tout citoyen pourra assister à des meetings publics, des congrès ou participer à des manifestations pacifiques sans crainte de sanctions ou de victimisation. Will the Honourable Mr. Mento agree that once this government came into power, it did exactly the opposite, and police have been arresting trade unionists who have been siding with workers in spontaneous demonstration, and militants who has been involved in spontaneous demonstration against the proclamation of our public beaches?
We have not promised anything contrary to what I have just said. We agree with the law as it is right now. And it is a duty of the police to see that order is maintained in all circumstances.
Honourable Mr. Mencho mentioned Article 13 of the Constitution, and the freedom of assembly can be restrained provided that the law is reasonably justifiable in a democratic society. What we are asking today is spontaneous gathering, not planned, not organized, people just being very angry with this government because they don't have water supply or for any reason, and they just come down and voice their mécontentement. Like you have in France, you have Gilets jaunes. So can I ask the Honourable Minister Mento whether he will consider amending the definition of public meeting under the Public Gathering Act to carve out for spontaneous, peaceful demonstration?
Well, the Honourable Member himself says that people come out with anger. They are not getting water. Well, we all know anger where it may lead to. Therefore, I think the law as it is and as it is being practiced is not contrary to the Constitution.